All right, welcome back to Riven, the sequel to Myst. I'm EOD, and yeah, well, let's just proceed here. Let's see where we're at. Uh, yeah. Ah, I see. So we left off taking the tram ride, and now we're on a different island. We don't know which island yet. But I mean, I know, but I'm not gonna tell you. No, I'm just kidding. It's Jungle Island. We'll figure out why it's called Jungle Island in a minute. At least that's what I call it. Anyway, the Riven re-release has happened for 2024. Just what yesterday, the day before, and it looks beautiful, man. I am thoroughly impressed. It's actually quite a step above this, which I was unsure if they were gonna be able to actually accomplish that. They did a great fucking job with it. So props to Cyan on that. I'm very impressed with what I see from it, and there are mix-ups and hiccups and redesigns of certain puzzles that are gonna make this entirely irrelevant if you're trying to use it to reference those puzzles. So warn everybody of that to start with. But I did watch a couple of guys play through a little bit of it, and I was very frustrated with them because they were frustrated. They didn't understand a lot of what was happening and why, what was important and why, and some of their note taking was really kind of screwed up. I mean, like even some of the puzzles that were introduced that I wasn't familiar with, I knew like, well, you're gonna have to remember that probably, and these guys are like, oh no, we don't care, we don't need to worry about that. There's a nice little notebook system in it, which I don't have, so I have a handwritten notebook here that I'm using, um, because that's how we had to do it in 1998. So I want to. I'm in it for the whole experience, man, the whole deal. But so far, off of Temple Island, which is what I'm calling the one with the island, the temple. That's all that says. It's just Riven YouTube playthrough. There's nothing else on this paper. Uh, so the island with the big temple on it, and the weird projection screen, and the throne, and all of that. I'm calling that Temple Island. There's really not a lot that you need in order to solve the game. Essentially, the game is really one big puzzle. Uh, but we'll figure that out later. What's important about Temple Island is the history and the situation and the cultural schism at work between the rebels, who we don't know who they are yet, the guy dressed in black with the red sash, and Gin and his scribes, if you will. Uh, we really haven't dug into what's going on here or why. And this is what was frustrating me about watching the other guys play through the remake is they would not take the time to read the journals. This is a game that's very much about reading, unfortunately. And I realize like a lot of people don't like to read. Everything is instant gratification these days. And reading, it seems so laborious. But right now, in the game, you do have an inventory and you do have something in it that can offer up a lot of information that can help answer questions and give life and depth to the world. And I really feel like you're missing out if you just don't take the time to actually read the journals. You have to. You really do. There are only 3 journals. Uh, Altogether, each one is probably about 15 to 20 pages if you printed it out on 8 by 8.5 by 11 or whatever. Uh, and it's just not much. It'll take you 10, 20 minutes to read through each of the journals, but it's an important 10 or 20 minutes to take in order to understand the world around you. So that's what we're going to do right now. Before we move on into the second island, as we depart the tram car here, we're going to pop open Atrus's journal and try to figure out what in the hell is going on. Okay, 87 610, 87 616. These seem to be dates, right? They held for more than 30 years, but the corrections I made to Riven have finally failed. The island has resumed the familiar pattern of decay that is the hallmark of my father's work. I must now race to implement this new patch before it's too late. I only hope that my revised theories are sound. And 6 days later, presumably, I don't think this is our date system. Otherwise, this would be 1987. The game was released in 1997. So perhaps it's not meant to be modern times. Maybe it's 1887. Maybe it's, you know, the 87th era of Dunny or some shit. It's some entirely different date system. We don't know. Anyway, uh, so on the 16th, revisions to Riven completed. There are still a number of minor adjustments which need to be made, but the basic corrections have been entered and should be working. Something's not right. I've been monitoring the instruments for several hours now, but have thus far observed no change. It's possible that I've made an error, though I've checked my entry against my pre-notation and can find no discrepancy. I've not had a rest in nearly 3 days, so it may be that I'm just not seeing it. If the fault is with my foundational assumptions, however, perhaps after a short rest I will see something. 3 days. Good Lord, Atrus. Take a nap, buddy. 2 days later. Success. It appears that my repairs have been effective after all. The gateway image has become noticeably clearer. Was it 7? It was 87.6. Okay. Anyway. Success! It appears that my repairs have been effective after all. The gateway image has become noticeably clearer, and although it is impossible to know this with absolute certainty, the island seems to have quieted itself. Just a few more weeks of work, and I should be free at last to go there myself and attempt to bring Catherine back. The past 8 months have left me little time to think, to devise a strategy for getting her out of there. I've received no sign from her in all that time. I'm afraid that no, I must not. I must assume that she is all right, lest my fears undermine my efforts to bring her back. Worried that she might be dead. The 19th, the next age, or the next day. I did not create the age of Riven, unlike my father. I've never presumed to have such power, and yet the future of all those who lived there has fallen into my hands. So far, I've managed to read the page before it turns. The island continues to appear stable, and I would like to believe that I have saved a dying world. But the theories of one individual cannot support the lives of real people indefinitely. I must get everyone off of Riven as soon as possible. The problem now is Gin. I'll never be able to rescue Catherine and relocate the islanders if he is still the man he once was. I haven't seen him in over 30 years, but his history forces me to assume that he is still a threat. His myopic mission to restore the Dunny civilization has left too many innocent cultures dying in its wake, and would continue to do so were he to once again be free of the confines of Riven, the Fifth Age, as he so coldly titled it. Oh, how interesting. So now, all of this iconography that we see with the circle and the five-pointed star and this weird symbol in the middle of it starts to make a little bit more sense, right? The five-sided room, you know, the five pipes leading out of the giant golden dome. The Fifth Age is where we are. So, it's like, I guess, Gideon's way of branding it. His fifth attempt, I assume. In any case, the universe has been safe from his corruptive influence for the last 33 years because no one has been able to leave that age. The last linking book out of Riven having been lost in the star fissure upon my return to Myst. That was my intention, to maroon my father on Riven by removing all the existing links to other worlds. And since the art of constructing books had long been lost with the fall of the Dunny, he would be trapped there for the remainder of his lifetime and effectively segregated from the countless other worlds that he would have invaded. In effect, that is what we achieved. But the way it fell, however, was no one's ideal. Though the sting of the incident has gradually faded from my memory, the deep pain of the responsibility for what actually came to be has never left me. At the time, it all seemed so clear. Gin's destructive path could not be allowed to continue. But it was never my choice that the innocent inhabitants of Riven, who had already suffered so much, would be the ones to pay for it. Enough! To dwell in the past is to die in the present. The situation is not the same as it was then. The knowledge I've acquired in the years since that time has yet to be applied to this problem. can Atrus save Riven? Really becomes a question at this point for him. He's not even sure that what he's doing is working. It's unclear. So I do want to put a little bit of something in the background because I realize now that the background music of the game turns off when you look at a journal. It's just complete silence. That's my bad. Anyway, here's some tracks from the Riven soundtrack, just at random. So, on the 20th, I believe this is the very next day. Yeah. I think I have the solution. Why did it not occur to me sooner? I do not know, unless the ideal of it had been pushed out with the thought of my sons. A prison book. Exactly what I did on Myst. He made 2 prison books, and they foolishly went into them willingly. Like honeypots, right? That's what they were. And I was going to say, on Myst, there was a journal for every single age you visited. So there was a crap ton of reading on Myst. But for this, there are only 3 journals, all told. But the ones on Myst were actually pretty short. Some of these are pretty long. Catherine's is really long. But we'll get there. Right. Many years ago, during a hunting expedition through the ruins of Dunny, I chanced upon a formula for a most unusual type of book. Unfortunately, due to the fact that my father was then in the habit of confiscating my discoveries, I was forced to leave it behind. Years later, however, as part of my efforts to protect the vulnerable worlds linked to the books in my library, on Myst, I was pleased to find that I could still recall most of the formula, and with little experimentation quickly succeeded in creating one of these devices myself. The procedure is actually quite simple. By altering key lines of text, but slightly, a normal linking book's connection can be partially severed, such that anyone who attempts to use the book will be permanently trapped in the dark void of the link. That's what happened to Sirius and Akbar, Atrus' sons. That is, unless someone else then uses the book, at which point that person would become trapped, and the first person displaced back into the world. And we witnessed this mechanic in Myst, actually. If you got some of the bad endings in Myst, you could trap yourself in one of their prison books, and then they would be free. The technique can be applied to books that have already been written. Changes to the original text being so slight that anyone who is unfamiliar with the code will be unable to detect them. If indeed my father has not changed, what better bait could there be than a book that appeared to be a link back here to Dunny? The 2nd of the next month. So that's, what, 12 days later. Trouble. My analysis of the island's condition has revealed that the tremors have begun again. The pattern, however, is new. The disturbances are the result of the changes I have made. This did not, at first, concern me. However, tremors of this type were one of the possible side effects that I had anticipated during this initial phase of the island's readjustment. Still, in order to verify my assumptions, I decided to calculate again, incorporating the new data. The results were not what I expected. The damage to the understructure is more extensive than I had realized. I can no longer go to Riven as planned. Catherine, forgive me. Dun dun dun. Next day. I must act while I still have the time. The signs are barely visible, but there's no question that the island's deterioration is accelerating. Total collapse is imminent unless I can keep ahead, and that is becoming increasingly difficult to do. With every passing moment, I gain a clearer picture of the incredible chaos that my father's economy of words has yielded. But it is a dismaying process. The complexity of the problem is overwhelming. There is no end to this. The last few days have all but convinced me that the collapse of Riven is inevitable, and that, at best, I can only strive to delay it for now, and hope that at some point, the island will become stable enough to risk a rescue attempt. How many days is that? 2. I think I've come up with a way to subdue the tremors. It will require my exclusive attention for at least a month or 2, so it may be necessary to discontinue these journals for a while. About a week later. Something truly miraculous has happened. Beyond all conceivable probability, someone has finally found my lost Myst linking book. That would be you. And has freed me from this prison. Right, yep, right at the end of Myst. That's what happens. You come to Dunny, to a region actually known as Kabir, and talk to Atrus and give him a Myst linking book. He is free. I immediately realized that this could be the solution to my dilemma, and I believe my mysterious benefactor is willing to assist me. I'm still not sure it can work. The logistics of such a scheme are formidable, but the mere fact that it may now be possible for me to continue my repairs to Riven and yet proceed with my original intent to find Catherine has given me renewed hope. The last few days have left me little time to work out the remaining problems with sending someone else to Riven. It did occur to me, however, that if a way could be found to signal me once Gin had been captured, it would no longer be necessary to take a real linking book and risk the possibility of inadvertently releasing Gin. The deteriorated state of the gateway image makes the use of a visual signal impossible, but the picture remains a reliable indicator of Riven's condition nonetheless. By measuring and interpreting variations in the noise patterns, I may still able to observe basic changes that occur in the age, even though I can't see them. The problem is that my instruments can only detect changes that occur on a fundamental level, and it seems unlikely that an individual could affect such an elementary change from within an age. The ideal may be foolish, especially with an unstable age, man. It's like, he's telling me that in order to signal him, I'm gonna have to fucking tear the world apart, because it's already falling apart, right? I'm gonna have to make some fundamental change that potentially destroys the entire world. That's fucking nuts. Still, there is a weakness that may be worth investigating, an anomaly that appears as a rift between the two separate systems, the Starfisher. But how or even if this fact could be exploited, I cannot say. Dun dun dun. Sending someone to Riven also means that once I receive the signal that they are ready to return, I would have to leave my writing in order to take a real linking book there myself. However, provided my father was safely out of the way, this should take very little time. After that, assuming the island does not incur much damage in my absence, it should then be a relatively simple matter to hold it together, long enough for Catherine to return to Riven and evacuate the remaining islanders. Yeah, assuming the island doesn't incur much damage. Predetermining a signal without knowing the topography of the island may prove impossible, but I'm afraid there can only be one answer to the question of whether or not I should send my friend to Riven with a way out. The potential for failure will be greatly diminished if the prison book is all that is taken. I'm sure my father's expecting me to bring a linking book. May he not be disappointed. And he wasn't. Gin's crony showed up to my prison cell and stole that prison book right out of my hands as soon as I arrived. But thankfully there was a rebel scout there to save my ass. Anyway, so that's Atrus's journal.